It's dark. You're lying in a shelter 40,000 years ago, and outside something snaps a twig. Your body reacts before your mind does. You are completely still, listening, because your brain has one overriding rule: assume someone is out there. That rule kept your ancestors alive, but it has a very strange side effect. Point that same brain at a river, a storm, a disease, a run of terrible luck, and it asks the exact same question it asked about the twig. Who did that? Every human culture we know of on every continent arrived at some version of the same answer. And here's what surprised me most while making this. The evidence suggests nobody had to invent it. We usually assume religion was invented by priests, by rulers who wanted control, or that it appeared after farming once people had spare time and surplus food. But the evidence points somewhere stranger. It may not have needed inventing at all. It may simply be what happens by default when this kind of brain looks at this kind of world. So let's start with the machinery inside your head. Humans have a social superpower. Psychologists call it theory of mind. It's the ability to model what's happening inside someone else's head. You use it constantly without noticing. Reading a face. Guessing why a friend suddenly went quiet. Without it, human society could not function at all. But here's the catch. That detector is tuned extremely sensitive. Imagine a rustle in the grass. It's probably just the wind. If you assume it's a predator and you're wrong, you lose a little energy and look silly. If you assume it's the wind and you're wrong, you don't get a second attempt. So evolution built a brain that sees someone behind everything. Better 1,000 false alarms than one fatal miss. Now take that brain and put it in a world with no science of any kind. The river doesn't just flow. The river wants to flow. The mountain doesn't erupt. The mountain is angry. The wind doesn't move through the trees. Something is out there, and it's grieving. Anthropologists call this animism, the idea that spirits live inside things. And it isn't stupidity. It's your social machinery running past the edges of society. And once you believe those forces have minds, something entirely logical follows. If they have minds, you can negotiate with them. You already know how to do this. You want a neighbor's help, so you offer a gift, and you speak respectfully. So you do exactly the same with the rain. You make an offering, you perform a ritual, you show respect. Worship didn't begin as philosophy. It began as a practical strategy. It turned a cold, random universe into a network of relationships you could actually bargain with. So where is the physical evidence for any of this? It's in how our ancestors treated their dead. Across the ancient world, people were buried with things. Stone tools, beads, marine shells, red ochre pigment. And in a world where a single good hand axe took hours of skilled labor, that is an enormous sacrifice. You don't bury a working tool in the ground, unless you believe the person still needs it. At a cave in Israel, people were buried with shells and pigment around 100,000 years ago. The objects are real. What they meant is an interpretation, and that distinction matters more than almost anything else in this video. Because here is where I want to be more careful than most videos on this subject. You've probably heard the story of the Neanderthal buried on a bed of flowers. Pollen was found clustered around a skeleton in a cave in Iraq. It's a beautiful image, and it gets told constantly, as proof that Neanderthals mourned their dead with ceremony. But many researchers now think that pollen was carried in by burrowing rodents, not by mourners, by animals digging tunnels through the soil. We genuinely don't know. And a lot of the famous evidence about ancient belief is exactly like this: compelling, widely repeated, and still very much argued over. Which brings us to the most famous site of all. In southeastern Turkey stand enormous T-shaped stone pillars, around 11,500 years old, carved with animals. arranged in circles, some of them weighing many tons, and the people who raised them had no metal, no wheels, and no farming. That part is solid. And it is genuinely astonishing. But you'll often hear a much bigger claim attached to it, that this proves religion created agriculture, that people settled down and farmed only in order to feed the crowds building the temple. That was the interpretation of Klaus Schmidt, the archaeologist who excavated the site. But more recent digs have found signs of people actually living there. Water systems, domestic traces, which makes the clean story of a purely ceremonial site much harder to defend. So here's the honest version, and it is still remarkable. Scattered groups came together. They moved stones weighing tons with no draft animals for something none of them needed to survive. They did it because of a shared idea. And that alone rewrites what we thought people at that time were capable of. But belief did something else too. Something colder and very practical. Think about a band of 30 people where everyone knows everyone. If you cheat or take more than your share, everyone finds out by evening. Gossip, mockery, and exclusion do the work of a police force. Now grow that group. Now you're trading with people you will never see again. And that break disappears completely. Many researchers argue this is where gods changed job. They stopped being forces you bargained with and became something that watched. You can hide from your neighbors. You cannot hide from something that sees everywhere. A group that believed it was being watched cooperated more, and more cooperative groups tended to last longer. It's an influential idea. It is also still being argued about. Some researchers think the big watching gods came after large societies, not before them. And ritual itself did something measurable to the people performing it. When people chant, dance, or move in time together, the brain releases bonding chemicals. Anxiety drops. Trust rises. A crowd of strangers starts to feel like family. Ritual wasn't decoration. It was social engineering, done with rhythm. Now I want to say the most important sentence in this video as clearly as I can. Everything we have covered explains why humans believe. It does not tell you whether what they believe is true. Archaeology has no tool that can answer that question. And it isn't trying to. Explaining where a question came from is not the same as answering it. And that ancient machinery has not switched off in you. You knock on wood. You wear the same shirt when your team is playing. You make a wish over candles. You avoid saying the thing that might jinx it, small, cheap attempts to negotiate with a universe that does not take requests. And late at night, when the floorboards creak, you still go quiet and listen. Long before writing, before farming, before anyone had built anything at all, humans looked up and asked whether anything was looking back. Nobody had to teach them that question. It came free with the brain. It may be the oldest question our species has ever asked, and we have never once stopped asking it.